I just feel that if they don't like who they're working for, go out and get another job. It's as easy as that. That's what everybody does.
There would be a lot of people that, under this contract, that would not be able to support their families, even younger people, because of the medical coverage. They'd have to go on welfare. They'd have to go on Medicare.
We've had to start paying on our medical. So it's really hard for me to sympathize with people who don't want to do this when no one asked us if we wanted to do it. We just, because my husband's not in a union.
I believe that some things are worth fighting for, and this is one of them. If they break our union or make it so weak that it's no longer good, that they'll break unions across the United States, and the whole middle class is going to suffer.
It seems like we're in this race, but it's not a race to the top, it's a race to the bottom.
In the early 1900s, America began to see the development of a middle class. This was the result, in part, of the progressive practices of some of the early industrial pioneers, such as Henry Ford.
In the early 20th century, there was this notion of using socially progressive techniques for the sake of accumulation. So in Ford's case, you pay workers a $5 a day, which was an unheard of wage early in the 20th century, for a couple of reasons. One, you build worker loyalty. Nobody's going to give up the job. They're receiving an unheard of wage. Two, you enhance productivity and alertness at the work site, and because you've improved morale. And three, you're putting money in the pockets of the very people who are going to buy what you're putting out the door of the factory, Model T Fords. I mean, you know, from the standpoint of an industrialist or a merchant, you know, you want a well-paid workforce because they're going to buy what you're marketing. If they're not paid well, where are you going to market it? And so the vision of that generation of American wealth was very much one of a kind of, you know, virtuous circle of economic growth. You know, I pay my workers well, they buy my product, I accumulate profits, I pay my workers well, and so on. Look at an historical figure like Franklin Roosevelt, who of course came from very elite circumstances. There's this notion of what was called noblesse oblige. You know, the nobility are obliged to look after the commoners. One, because they are better off. Two, because if they don't look after the commoners someday are going to show up on the doorstep looking for their heads.
Bert and the others need to understand the seriousness of this matter, and it's going to become a national labor issue. The flames will spread across this country, and they need to know this fight will go on. And this kind of corporate misbehavior breeds acts of revolutionary outrage.
The policies of the early industrialists and the negotiating practices of the unions led to the development of a growing middle class. During the years following World War II, livable wages, health care, retirement plans, limits on the work week, and other benefits made it possible for workers to begin to plan for their futures and the welfare of their families.
The civilization of the past 100 years, with its startling industrial changes, has tended more and more to make life insecure. Young people have come to wonder what would be their lot when they came to old age. The man with a job has wondered how long the job would last. This Social Security measure gives at least some protection to 30 million of our citizens who will reap direct benefits through unemployment compensation, through old age pensions, and through increased services for the protection of children and the prevention of ill health. We can never insure 100% of the population against 100% of the hazards and vicissitudes of life, But we have tried to frame a law which will give some measure of protection to the average citizen and to his family against the loss of a job and against poverty-stricken old age. It seems to me that if the Senate and the House of Representatives in this long and arduous session had done nothing more than pass this security bill, Social Security Act, the session would be regarded as historic for all time.
You know, grocery workers don't work 9 to 5. They don't work Monday through Friday. They don't have summers off. They don't have holidays off. And I didn't mind working holidays, and I didn't mind working 6 days because I was getting something for my sacrifices.
My time, my life is an investment every bit as important and every bit as valid as a 401k. And that is the compact that American business used to make.
I feel like I've invested myself in my job, and I put my family through school, and my kids, I've raised them on this job. It was a job that somebody could get without having to go to school, or maybe somebody didn't have the opportunity to go to school like myself. I was a welfare kid. I didn't even know about community college. I didn't know all the options that were available to me. So I made the best decision that I could to support myself. And that type of a job needs to be available for people. Not everyone is cut out to go to college. Not everybody has that in them to go and get their way through life, get a degree, get a great job. We need people that are intelligent enough to keep these jobs going so that the community doesn't suffer, because we'll have less and less people that are able to purchase all the goods and services everyone's offering. If you work at a job where you don't make enough to even live on, how can you keep your neighbor's business going by patronizing them?
At $12 an hour, working 20 hours a week, nobody is buying Lamborghinis and nobody is buying beachfront property in Del Mar. They're barely getting by. But they're able to not be afraid if their kid has a toothache. They're able to not think that the world is going to come to an end if they need a breast biopsy. It's going to cost them $5, life goes on.
We're the people who buy homes and purchase cars and try to send our kids to college. We're not getting rich on this, but we're able to get by. To me, that is middle class. That's who we are.
I typically view the 1950s and at least the first two-thirds of the 1960s as sort of the heyday of the American middle class as we understand it. Good jobs, stable jobs, rising incomes, the ability to provision households, purchase real estate, send a new generation to college or to technical or professional schools, so forth. This is all characteristic of a growing proportion of the American middle class in the wake of World War II. And even by the 1960s, even some segments of minority communities previously, disenfranchised from economic processes actually begin to find their way into these improving economic conditions. From about 1968 onward, the middle class in the United States is placed in an increasingly weakened economic position.
The rise of the middle class was effectively inhibited when the regressive tax policies of the Reagan administration were put into place. The gap between the bottom 20% and the top 20% began to widen, creating a trend that has continued to the present.
The Reagan tax code is, in my view, arguably one of the most unfair revisions of the federal tax code in history. If by fairness you mean that the wealthier people are, the higher their tax burden should be in a proportionate sense. That's the definition of progressive taxation. The Reagan cuts and revisions in tax code regulation was all about regressive cuts. If you're going to engage in a tax cut strategy to stimulate spending, you should focus the tax cuts toward the lower ends of the income distribution, because the propensity receiving the benefits of those tax cuts will be to spend the money on actual consumption. Whereas at the upper end of the income distribution, if you deliver a huge tax cut into their hands, the propensity will be to save the money in a bank account or in some asset, you know, buy stock, buy a bond, and that won't necessarily stimulate anything in the way of production and employment. It will simply make certain people wealthier on paper and involve the trading of ownership of these pieces of paper, stocks, bonds, and so forth.
In recent years, a continuation of regressive taxation and corporate policies which place stockholders above loyal employees reflects society's denigration of work.
In American society today, the kind of social Darwinism that's so rampant, that everything of mine I got by myself and everything bad that happens to somebody is their fault, leads people to sense that there's no obligation, and that indeed it is a war of all against all. It's a mad scramble for the available resources. There's no worry about the commoners showing up on one's doorstep to take one's head because you're living in a gated community with multiple security guards and so forth. So you're not frightened by this vast inequity, and you feel no compulsion to act about it. It's a sad commentary on the state of American civilization today, but not surprising in a society that basically thinks the market defines everything we do.
I think greed's here to stay, and I think it's just running rampant. People are just looking out for number one. It's the me first attitude, and it's just getting more and more and more that way. It's really depressing because I don't know what to tell my kids.
We've turned a newer generation into automatons who simply think in terms of the market calculus, but the very things that will make them happy stand outside that calculus, and they don't know how to think about them. So in other words, if you simply look at this with the personality of the glutton, this all makes sense.
All I know is that grocery stores don't operate on a huge profit margin. That's all I know. I mean, they're not all the people that work for Vons are not getting those huge Enron checks. They're not giving lavish parties for the people that own the company. I mean, they're not that kind of a company, and they make actually a fairly modest salary for a huge corporation.
Stephen Bird, CEO of Safeway, received a salary of over $1.2 million for the year 2002. 2 weeks before the UFCW strike, he also made a profit of over $40.8 million on the sale of his stock awards.
Where greed becomes a kind of gluttony of, I want it all for myself because I don't care about anyone else, where the accumulation of wealth is about keeping score rather than needing a certain level of wealth, and where that attitude of gluttony is accompanied by the notion that your ability to accumulate wealth owes nothing to the society in which you have accumulated that wealth, then I think you have the recipes of a real social breakdown.
Now it's just getting down to the bottom line. Everybody's just looking out to make a buck, and it's sort of the middle class is going away.
Individuals who say, why should I be taxed? I earn all my money by my hard work, imagination, skill, and wit, are forgetting that outside the legal framework, political framework, and social framework that this nation of ours provides, they would be accumulating nothing.
To put it in perspective, every time I run out there and I work produce, so okay, let's say I run out there, I put an apple out. Well, you come in and you say, that's a real good looking apple, and you take it up and you buy that apple. Okay, you just put some money into the executive's pocket, but all you brought me is I got to stack more apples. And so that puts it in perspective. These guys are making their money off our backs.
In the year 2002, Larry Johnston, CEO of Albertsons, earned $1.9 million in salary and bonuses, plus $10.3 million in stock awards. His benefits package was valued at almost $170,000 and included the use of the company aircraft, personal financial planning, and an amount equal to his taxes for the year.
I would argue very strongly that the man who puts bread in my basket and helps me to eat brings a lot more to my life in a tangible way than someone who does hedge funds in the financial district in Sereno Valley.
In other words, to be acquisitive, calculating, only for oneself is regarded as the necessary behavior to make all of us better off. And the irony in that, of course, is that the things on which human happiness ultimately depends, I think we could all agree, love, honor, faith, the perception of beauty, the dispensation of justice, you know, these things, they have nothing to do with this calculus. And every effort to reduce them to that calculus is sterile. I mean, it yields bizarre and outrageous outcomes. So now we have the spectacle of people going to the voting booth, and when they make their decision, the decision is, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? What's in it for me? And yet, the inspired citizen, not to mention the happy human being, is precisely the person who's also asking, you know, what's in it for all of us?
The grocery workers' strike in Southern California in the fall of 2003 gave us an opportunity to look at the trends in corporate practices in regards to the middle class.
You know, I worked in the grocery business when I was in high school back in the early 70s. And I worked for Ralph's. And I was there when the Ralph's family, the actual guys, the Richard Ralphs and them, came into the store and talked to us as employees. And it was a family environment, and that's what businesses have been. Now it's just getting down to the bottom line. Everybody's just looking out to make a buck, and it's sort of the middle class is going away.
We went from dealing with regional companies who wanted to maintain a sense of competitiveness to going with national companies who have deep pockets. We were aware the companies wanted to make changes, and we knew that. But to the degree, and to do it in one shot, I think we were shocked. None of us could have expected they would hand us a proposal like this on October the 5th.
The public seemed to have very little knowledge about the issues that mattered most to the union membership. Issues like a two-tier pay system, loss of health benefits for retirees, and wages that had not kept up with inflation for several years. Actuarial accountants also indicated that the average cost of health insurance would rise to $400 a month during the 3 years of the contract.
The numbers that you hear are not really real numbers because they don't usually give people full-time. Most of the people in here are part-time. Most of the people only get maybe 25, 30 hours a week. The average pay in here is about $13 an hour. So when you do the math on that, and then you throw a real hefty health care fee on top of that, it's hard to survive. It's hard to feed your family.
The average employee making $13 an hour and working 30 hours a week brings home $390 per week. That amounts to $20,280 per year. After paying off health insurance, that amount drops to $15,260 annually. The federal poverty level for a family of 3 is $18,850.
The minimum amount of hours that they are required to work is 24 hours a week. None of us are going to get rich on 24 hours a week. I mean, I see tons of single moms and single dads trying to get by with no guarantee of hours, no guarantee of promotion or even opportunity for promotion. I've been in this business for 30 years. This is my 30th year. And I'm a part-time employee. I don't make huge money. I make a really nice hourly wage. I have wonderful benefits. But I don't make huge amounts of money. I supplement my family's income, and I provide our medical benefits. And the contract that they gave us is the worst contract I've ever seen in 30 years, which is why it was unanimously voted down. It was asking us to pay more than I make, probably a quarter of what I make a month for my medical benefits.
Don't squeeze middle-class workers who are fighting hard to just pay the bills every week because they want to put more money in their shareholders and their corporate executives' pockets.
One of the most common misconceptions of the events of 2003 was that the picketers at Ralph's and Albertsons were on strike.
When I reported to work the first day of the strike against Vons, I showed up at, I think, 5:45 in the morning for my 6 a.m. shift. And my manager met me at the front door and told me I was not allowed to come to work. I was joined by several other employees who had been told the same thing. And at that point in time, he informed us that we were locked out, laid off. I've been told if I go into my store, I will be arrested. We were told that on the first day of the lockout. I want to go back to my job. I want to earn a living.
In the early afternoon, we'll get a couple of the elderly that'll go by and they'll nonchalantly under the breath as they're walking away, they'll go, "Get a job." So, well, we have a job. We'd like to protect the one that we've got. You know, I've been with this company for 24 years, and during the whole period of time, we've always made a career out of it. That's what we want to continue doing. You know, in one fell swoop in this contract negotiation, they want to just yank that whole thing right off from underneath of us. And that's the toughest thing for me to comprehend. You know, why they would want to do something like that.
Their position, especially now that we know that they entered into a mutual aid pact, the Big Three, was a strike against one is a strike against all.
Is an even more powerful effort to try to break workers' will, to try to break your right to organize, to try to break your right to collective bargaining, to try to break your right to strike.
Bottom lining it for you. In the last 3 years, from the year 2001 up to 2004, between court decisions and the steps that President Bush's administration has made in the Department of Labor and the Department of Commerce, it has made it easier for stores to consolidate. It's made it easier, frankly, for stores to collude. This is antitrust violations, and it doesn't take a lawyer schooled in this to know it.
It is our view, the professional lawyers in my office, it is our view that these chains have violated the federal antitrust laws written by a great Republican president, Teddy Roosevelt, a century ago. We have a duty to the consumers, the grocery shoppers of the state of California, to see that prices are not illegally and artificially raised because of the illegal conspiracy of these grocery chains. So we're going to litigate and we're going to fight hard. And I don't care if they hire every big hot-shot law firm in the country. We're going to fight these guys. But Bert and the others need to understand the seriousness of this matter, and it's going to become a national labor issue. The flames will spread across this country, and they need to know this fight will go on. Brothers and sisters, let's go!
California's state attorney general will continue after the strike to go after the grocery chains for illegally acting in collusion and attempting to break the unions. But the public in general has been led to believe that those on the picket line were the cause of the problem.
Basically, everyone's saying, well, I make $8 an hour, why should you make $9? Displacing the anger, displacing the concern, and displacing the outrage that should be based upon corporations who are making record profits at the people who help them do it. Everyone knows how vulnerable they are, and seeing striking grocery workers underscores that. And it doesn't matter if you live in Spring Valley or Barrio Logan or Rancho Santa Fe or Tierra Sana or Eastlake and Chula Vista. We are all vulnerable because it doesn't matter if you're making $17,000 a year or 70. Everybody lives paycheck to paycheck. Everybody has a high debt load. Everybody knows that they are one management decision away from being made redundant.
If you have children or grandchildren, you're going to be hurting them by crossing the picket line. Somewhere down the road, when they can't find a decent job, you can look back at this point in history and know that you helped cause that by not supporting this cause.
While the issues of the strike were numerous, healthcare was often cited as the most contentious point of the conflict. The facts and fictions were difficult to glean in the press.
I realize that the union people at Albertsons and the different the different stores, they want to keep their benefits, but the way the economy is going, we all can't keep exactly what we've had. You know, but as far as medical goes, because medical is just shooting up through the roof all across the United States, I don't think that the people who are in the grocery unions should consider themselves so special that they can't take a little loss or a little cut in money also, because everybody else is seeming to have to do that.
Well, from what I understand, the people who are striking, they want, if I've heard it correctly, they want them to take a $20 a week cut, which really, to me, is not a lot of money, because I know when you're in a union, they make fairly good money compared to, I think, the average household.
The contract that they want us to sign will end up our people who have worked it out. By the end of the contract period, which is just 3 years, we'll be paying $400 a month for health insurance, and the health insurance won't be as good as what we have now. There are a lot of people who don't work 40 hours a week, who need the medical coverage, and it's going to be, 30 or 40% of their salary, which, that isn't what we hired on for.
I mean, I'm a strong supporter of the workers in the strike, and I do think that workers in general will be somewhat better off if the grocery workers win this strike than if they were to lose it. But even if they win the strike, the pressures on health benefits for all low and moderate workers in California and throughout the country will continue. Winning this strike is not going to solve the problem by any means. Losing it will accelerate the problem and serve as a kind of catalyst for this. Workers who are making $8 or $10 an hour, as many of the new workers will be making, can't afford to contribute $3 an hour. They just won't be able to get decent health benefits for the contribution that the grocers are proposing.
It's not about $5 and $15. It's about saving affordable health care and having pensions for everybody in the United States of America.
Well, I'm a community college teacher. They're about to negotiate our contracts too. I'm represented by the American Federation of Teachers. So when they come in to negotiate our contract this month, they're going to be telling us the same thing they've told them. You have to pay for your medical benefits. I think if they see that the unions are strong and will hold up and negotiate from strength, that they'll think twice before they start adding these costs onto us. But we have to get a handle on medical costs. I mean, this is bigger than the unions, it's bigger than retail, it's bigger than schools. It really is medical costs across the board.
If the employers say that we could keep it all, and it's only about $5 and $15 a week, bring me the damn contract right now and I'll sign it.
The giant corporations, in this case corporations who deal with the sale of food, are doing everything they can to knock down health benefits for their workers. Now, what could be more important, or what should be more important for any corporation than to have a healthy workforce?
What happens to someone who can make, let's say, $40,000 or $50,000 a year, part of the middle class, and for whom their family's health insurance costs $8,000? Well, they may still be in the middle class, but if they have to fully pay for their health insurance, much more tenuously.
It's nothing short of inhumane. You don't tell some mother whose child has leukemia, well, we'll approve 10 chemotherapy treatments and that's it. That's all we're paying for. Because then what you're asking at that point in time is for the state to absorb the rest, or for your tax dollars and my tax dollars to pay for everybody else's medical benefits? How do you justify that?
Without a healthy workforce and without a healthy community, you don't have a healthy nation. Right. We're standing here for the health of our nation.
Equally troublesome to the strikers was the concept of a two-tier wage system, which they saw as a triple threat. It continued to undermine their own jobs, since the companies could hire a new pool of two-tier workers who would have permanently lower hourly wages and fewer benefits. This would be a corporate incentive to reduce the hours for current employees and use lower-paid workers instead. It would also weaken the bargaining power of current employees, while new employees would be hired at such poor wage rates that they would not see the benefits of unionizing and collective bargaining. The third and equally important concern is the threat to the community at large, as the number of decent jobs would be eroded.
Almost 4 months into this, though, this is bigger. This is a test case for the rest of the nation in terms of breaking unions, in terms of not just having a two-tier pay system in the grocery business, but having a two-tier income and class system in this country. More stratification that's already there, and we've already got stratification.
The two-tier, basically anybody that would get hired, say we're in there working right now, anybody that was hired from the day on, they'd actually be set at a different pay scale than us. So I could be doing my job, making what I make, and the guy next to me in a few years could be doing what I'm doing also. And he might be making $8 an hour less than what I make, and we're both doing the exact same thing. And that's just going to bring controversy and stuff into the workplace too. Because I know I'd want to make, if I was doing the same job as somebody else, I'd want to make what they're making.
You stand here in defense not only of yourselves, but in defense of the rights of all workers to collective bargaining, to the right to organize, to the right to strike, and you deserve the support of workers all over this country for doing that.
Strikers who were looking forward to retirement and who had supported the growth of the markets for 15, 20, 30 years felt an added sense of betrayal because under the new contract, many of them would not receive full promised retirement benefits, including health care.
I took care of these people for over 25 years. They made their money off my back. And so now it's their turn to take care of me. And they're saying, well, let me just slap you in the face. Shake hands with you with this hand and slap you in the face with the other. Because I'm too old to start all over. I can't do this again.
You go back any of these picket lines and you're going to see the average age of any given picketer is probably 35 to 45. You're looking at moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas who have put their whole lives into these careers.
Yeah. Again, we're not sure how this is going to play out, but there's a possibility that the retirees, people that have already retired, could lose a lot of their health benefits. The money's locked in, but not the health benefits. And the companies are looking at increasing their costs significantly, which if people are on fixed incomes, that's going to be a real problem. My mom falls under that category. My dad was retired from this business, so she stands to lose quite a bit if the companies get their way.
I don't want to be out here. I don't want to take the kind of abuse that we've taken the last 3 months. It hasn't been much fun. Yeah. The people who were loyal and were here and were hired on when these companies were expanding and growing their business, a lot of us, the 30-year employees, the 20-year employees, the 15-year employees, we were here. I opened college and Mission. I opened the store in Carlsbad. I opened the store in Del Mar. I did what they asked me to do. I helped support, these companies when they were growing their business. And now at this point, when they've got the business and their profits in the last contract, the last 4 years, their profits have grown 91%. So they're making almost twice as much money as they were the last time we negotiated a contract, and they want to cut what we're getting.
The combined operating profits of the three chains rose from $5.1 billion to $9.7 billion between 1998 and 2002, an increase in profits of over 90%.
They don't want to support the people who made these companies grow. Without us, they wouldn't be where they are. And I feel like I've been left behind and been somehow it's been a I feel abandoned, and I feel like I've been cheated on.
These executives, they don't have to worry about their retirement. They don't have to worry about their golden years. They're making sure that their retirement funds are fully vested, but they're doing it at the expense of their workers. I say that it is time in America for us to stand for every worker who puts their time in, who deserves a fair retirement. They have their retirement plan fully funded. That's a law. It ought to be enforced. We ought to make sure they pay into it.
I feel that very strong that the people who work for Vons are very dedicated people, extremely dedicated, and I feel that they should be compensated for their the way that they deal with the public. They're so educated in their field, and to take everything away is just, it's not right. It's not right.
Have we not always been professionals?
Yeah!
Are they not taking the professionalism out of this?
Yeah!
We're not going to let them.
No!
I have 32 years in, and I just cannot understand giving up holidays, weekends, midnight shifts that I've worked for these people to make profit and have a nice time doing it, for them to treat us the way they're treating us, and it hurts. That profit margin doesn't mean diddly squat to me anymore.
That's right!
And I'm sorry, but they're taking professionalism out of the industry, and they're going to get Walmart employees is what they're going to get. One day longer.
One day stronger.
One day longer.
One day stronger.
The people that work in these stores and that are part of the union, I'm not saying that the union makes them this way, but they're very professional, they're very helpful, they truly care.
When the president of Safeway basically says that $17 an hour is too much, when it probably costs more than $17 an hour to cut his hair, it goes right back to the denigration of work.
Hi everybody, brothers and sisters. Just got back from Steve Bird's house. They didn't let me go up there. Obviously, I must have been a threat, me and my 2-year-old daughter. It's okay though. I'm 21 years old. I got pregnant when I was 18 years old. I refused to take the system. I worked for what I have, never asked for welfare, never asked for anything, and that's why I'm here holding the line for everybody else. It's about our health care, it's about our kids. We're gonna do it! We're gonna do it! We're gonna overcome Steve Bird. He says he's a man of faith. I don't believe it. If he was a man of faith, he would have went back to the tables.
Yeah!
One day longer, one day stronger.
The interfaith community came out in support on various occasions.
Every Sunday I go to church and I listen to the gospel. I hear God tell Zachary to come down from the tree. I want to talk to you about how you're treating your employees. And I believe that if Jesus was back on earth, he'd be talking to Mr. Bird right now.
The message has to be heard loud and clear across this nation. There is still right and wrong. And there is wrong in the workplace when employers steal the lives of their workers. And that's what's happening to you. Oh Lord God, we stand before you today in need. We pray, our Heavenly Father, that you will touch the hearts of the oppressor, that they may see their wrong, that they may turn to the right, that they may respect your law, that they may respect your moral law, and do what is right.
The months of the strike were difficult for the workers. Many of them had to find another job while they continued to walk the line in support of their cause.
You know, I mean, I worked a 40-hour job here before, but now it's between 40 and 60 hours being out here and traveling from here, traveling to the other stores.
And there's a percentage that have had to get jobs to take care of their families. I went out and got a full-time job. It doesn't pay quite as much, but I'm still finding time to get out here and picket because this is a very important cause. And I think that a lot of people that have gotten jobs are still on the picket lines because they realize how important this is.
You know, union wages and benefits kind of set the standard for the community. And what we get portends what they're going to get.
I feel that if they break our union or make it so weak that it's no longer good, that they'll break unions across the United States and the whole middle class is going to suffer. The next generation obviously is going to suffer more than than anybody else, because they're not going to be able to find a decent job with decent pay and decent benefits if these companies get what they want.
It's a fight that we need to fight.
I'm resolved. I'm here till the bitter end.
In the end, the community supported the strikers in many ways as private citizens and as members of other unions. From the first day on, customers refused to cross the lines, with an average of 75% of customers shopping elsewhere, amounting to nearly $2 billion in lost profit for the companies.
It's really, really easy for me to decide that I'm going to support grocery workers because of convictions that I've had for a while. But even if I didn't hold those convictions, my two neighbors both work for Albertsons. One works in Casa de Oro, the other one works in La Mesa. It's how they pay their mortgage. It's how they bring me muffins at Christmas. They're my friends.
Okay, I got to show a little support. And I thought a fun way to do this would be, hey, you know, you all are out here. All these people are out here in the cold and damp and through all kinds of weathers and everything. It gets a little lonesome, and you need some indication of support. Besides, it's a fun thing to do. Everybody loves donuts, and there's nothing like a good hot cup of coffee in the morning.
The people really been good around here in this area. Been very fortunate. We get a lot of people that come by still are honking, and a lot of the teachers, fire departments, police departments, things like that. They have a job to do, but they understand what we're going through because they realize whatever happens to us, even though they may not be in the same union as us, the same is going to apply to them with their health and welfare benefits.
I would roast in hell before I cross the picket line. I really would. This is my Sunday morning ritual, and as long as I'm able to do it, I'll do it. And as I tell everybody, I sure hope I don't see you next week, because I hope this strike gets settled, and I hope that the union workers get the wages they deserve and the benefits they deserve, because these translate to the wages and the benefits for all of us. When one sector of the public works for another sector, it's the case, the old saying, when the tide comes in, all the boats rise. So let's get all the boats rising and get the union its contract.
Because I see these people who cross the picket line, they won't look at you, they'll go look straight ahead, because God forbid they go 5 minutes out of their way. And I argue with these people who tell me, you know, well, I'm anti-union. I say, well, ho. Do you make time and a half for your work? Yeah. You get double time for holidays? Yeah. You get a pension? Yeah. You get health care? Yeah. Well, where the hell do you think those concepts came from?
Those that are left in the Machinists Union are going to walk with you, talk with you, support you. We adopted our store, Albertsons, up at Kearney Mesa. Next Friday, the Machinists Union Hall is hosting a fundraiser. One of our locals has just pledged $10,000 for your workers.
We've got support from Canada. We have got checks from trade unions in Japan, from trade unions in Ireland, trade union in Belgium, trade union in Denmark, trade union in Germany, and we will get more.
Whatever we need to do, the AFL-CIO is with you all the way. Que viva la huelga!
My name is David Sanchez. I'm the Vice President of the California Teachers Association. We want to say thank you for letting us be here and be a part of this wonderful gathering. We are supportive of everything that is happening to our striking workers. Teachers have been walking the picket lines.
I want to tell you a little story. When we have struggles and we have issues, sometimes at our work meetings, we'll pass the hat. We might collect $500, maybe to $2,000 of an extreme emergency when we pass the hat. People dig in their pockets at the union meeting. Well, we passed the hat at our last meeting, and we collected for the UFCW workers premiums and some of their health care problems. We passed the hat, and we got $17,500 out of our members' pockets. UNAC represents 14,000 RNs, registered nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, and other healthcare professionals. You have to understand there's a direct link to the striking UFCW members and UNAC. The UNAC members provide the healthcare that the UFCW members are struggling to maintain. UNAC members depend on the success of these workers. We are here to support these workers in their struggle to maintain their health care benefits.
The actions of the corporations before and during the strike clearly demonstrated that this dispute was not simply about negotiating for wages and benefits, but was really an attempt to break the will of the workers and crush the union.
This absolutely is not about a dollar figure anymore. On December 19th, we made a proposal to the companies that actually would have saved them over the life of this contract $500 million. That would have been of cost shifting from the employers to our members, their employees. And they took about 10 minutes to reject it. It's not about money. It's about changing the system. It's about changing the entire phase of the grocery industry, and certainly trying to break our union and our members.
We went into this negotiation knowing that we were going to give some things up. We even offered a contract that gave some concessions and worked out a deal that we thought was a fair compromise. And the corporate powers didn't even want to look at it.
We know we're going to have to make a few concessions, but we just don't want to give away the farm here. We asked them, if you're going to do this, why don't you do it in increments? They said, we are.
They don't want to negotiate this contract. They sit across from you when you're talking to them playing tic-tac-toe. When we talk about members whose health benefits are running out, they laugh at the other side of the table. If you remember in week 1, Steve Byrd made a comment to the press, and it was this: let's see what happens when they have to do without a paycheck for a week. Well, I'll tell you something. They've been without paychecks for 15 weeks, Mr. Byrd, so you can kiss my ass.
We are on strike to try to keep as much of our contract as possible. We're not asking for any improvements. We're just trying to keep some of what we had. The companies have basically dug in, and pretty much the original offer, with a few minor exceptions, is what's on the table right now. The unions have given up, the people have given up hundreds of millions of dollars worth of concessions that we never thought we would give up, and the companies are not budging. They won't even really give us an offer to vote on right now. They're just trying to get people to cross the picket line and come back to work and take that original offer, which was so bad that 99% of 70,000 people voted to reject that. And I asked people even today, after 3 months, how would you vote if we voted that over? And most of them tell me they'd still vote to reject it. It's that bad.
I see one more letter to the Union Tribune, the anti-union Union Tribune. These people, I don't feel sorry for them. They're making $12 an hour, they're making $17 an hour, and I don't even make that, so I don't care about them. You know what? There's a reason why these people have been paid decently. We're not getting rich. I tell these people on radio all the time, the reason they're being paid decently with good benefits over the years is one good reason: the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. So maybe I tell these callers, maybe instead of bitching about what they make versus what you make, you ought to get your ass a union. Yeah!
There is a strong feeling in many quarters that the middle class is indeed going away, and that the ever-widening gap between the haves and have-nots will result in a society that is primarily comprised of the very rich and working poor.
I think if the companies win, it's kind of the, you know, the bell is ringing on the death toll. It's ringing for middle class America all across the nation, because unions all across the nation are watching this. Because if they're able to hurt us the way that they'd like to hurt us, it's going to be a ripple effect. It's going to be a domino effect clear across the nation. It's not just us they're hurting. Every other union will then have to fight the same fight that we're fighting, and middle class America will disappear. You're going to have the very rich and the very poor. And I think that the ripple effect extends to more people being on public assistance, more people working in dead-end, go-nowhere jobs. I mean, union jobs are the hope of middle-class America. I mean, I've been there for 30 years because of that, because I had great benefits, because I made a really decent wage. You take that away from people and you've got no middle class left.
By the late 20th century, though, the American economy is in a different situation, where an increasing percentage of its growth is dependent on overseas activity, where social burdens have risen to a point where firms are eager to escape from taxation environments, and they want to lower the costs of their labor, so they head offshore. Capital becomes footloose. And so the logic of a Henry Ford in paying the $5 a day now in the 1980s, 1990s, early 2000s, seems like a totally illogical strategy when you can simply pull up stakes and move to Singapore and pay workers $5 a week. I'm exaggerating, but you see the point, to produce output. So, in other words, the notion that profitability was dependent on a well-paid workforce has now yielded to an older notion that profitability is dependent on keeping the wage as low as possible so that the profit margin is as high as possible. But it's sort of like it's 1905 again, not 1920 or 1930 in the U.S.
Basically, it's going to be a bunch of very, very, very well-paid people and everybody else scraping by on $7.50 an hour and feeling lucky they have it. That's not okay.
The night before the vote on the new contract, everyone was ready to celebrate. 2 months after, it was easier for everyone to understand the full impact of the new contract, good and bad.
For me personally, I spent 5 months on a picket line to save my retirement after 31 years on the job, and we saved our retirement. Yeah. We are collecting less. The company is contributing less. However, that's huge for me compared to the fact that they wanted to give us absolutely nothing. And they are finding it very difficult to bring in replacement workers under the new two-tier system, because these people don't want to work alongside us making minimum wage for 2 years and doing the job that we're expected to do.
They're going to require those people to step up to all the standards that we were held to. Well, for $6.75 an hour, I wouldn't stick around.
Now, mind you, we got no raise with this contract for
And we don't get a raise. 3 solid years,
3
no
years of
raise.
this contract. We did not fight for a raise. We fought to keep what we already had. Respect the fact that I've been there 31 years, that she's been there, how many years have you been there? 15 and a half years. We lost a kid who walked our picket line, who had been with the store for, I don't know, maybe a year or so before the lockout. And he recently got a job with Costco. And I thought it was real interesting because when he came back to see us and he was telling us about his interview with Costco and stuff, he said when they interviewed him, they said to him, "We're looking for people that are going to stay long term. We want people that are going to make this a career." You're going to see more and more of that, because who wants to work for a company who really doesn't want you there?
You know that the management really doesn't care.
Mm-hmm. Will this company ever have our loyalty again? Oh, no. Categorically not.
What do you see the role of independent media, and for
us, we're primarily interested in public access process.
Public access is absolutely critical, and in the same way people fought for Pacifica Radio, the network I come from, people fought for public interest channels all over the country. When the cable companies come in, they have a monopoly because the community doesn't want the roads to be ripped up more than once. And media activists fought for that little bit of precious public space, a few public interest channels to give back to the community. And when these cable companies renegotiate, they often want to try to get rid of them. And the only way to ensure that they aren't lost is that people know about these channels and watch it, and that the community makes their own media on these channels. It is a precious public resource, and I congratulate you for doing the work you do. It is very important. It really is the hope of the future.
What does Democracy Now! Provide that isn't provided elsewhere?
Well, I think on a local level it is. I mean, on stations like yours, the kind of work you're doing. And I think the power of Democracy Now! Is that it really connects the dots all over the country. It is a national, global, through democracynow.org, people access us and watch it, video and audio stream at democracynow.org. It's a national and global grassroots, independent, unembedded news hour, bringing out the voices of the grassroots of local communities. So not that small circle of pundits in Washington explaining the world to us, but people at a local level engaged in their own struggles. And each one of those has national and global implications, because we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. You are the experts in your own community, and it's bringing out those voices. They're the most authentic. We have the most to learn from those. So it's linking communities all over the country. That, I think, is the power of Democracy Now! And the power of local public access programming.